Hello everyone, Robert Saunders here again, and today we're going to take a look at APEX File deployed to Azure with Terraform. A lot of people have been asking about this, they want to know how to do it. I want to show you how easy it is to deploy the OneFS file system, which is APEX File, deployed to Azure so you can have this scale-out architecture using Smart Connect, Sync IQ, the multi-protocol, which I love, which is very cool. All the things you can do with PowerScale on premises, you can now do with APEX File in the cloud. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how all this stitches together. First and foremost, the layout, the deployment overview. How do we do this? Well, we stand up Azure virtual machines, we connect disk and networking to them, build the appropriate security groups or NSGs as you see here, and then we cluster them all together and you have the OneFS file system and the GUI or the CLI that you can manage your APEX File scale out NAS. So let's take a look at this. Super easy to do. First and foremost, there's a deployment guide written by one of my peers up on InfoHub. There's the link, the Terraform registry, and then the GitHub branch within where you can pull all the Terraform that I'm using today in your environment and be well on your way to deploying. So here we are inside the Terraform Visual Studio Code, Git Bash. It's a Terraform deployment, and I'm already connected with AZ CLI. If you take a look at the README there, there's a lot of good information, which is also part of the GitHub repo. You can set up some of the prerequisites and also understand the variables and the parameters they need to set up for Terraform, the TF-vars file, which is what I'm actually looking at right here. I'm building a very small cluster using a node size that's kind of our minimally support. I'm using cluster node of 4 and then a max of 8. Again, I'm just showing the demo here. Your cluster size may vary. I'm only using a few data disks and I'm using standard LRS for both the OS and my data drives. Gain some efficiencies there. It's worth noting that you do need to build a password hash, and a note here, especially for this video, when you build this password hash, you see the open SSL password that I have commented out there. Do this in a Linux machine or do this with WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, excuse me, and then you build this hash properly. This will all flow straight through when you give the default hash password there to your Terraform TF-vars. Use a Linux environment. There, I highlighted there is exactly what you have to do. Perfect. So now let's move on to the deployment. Again, there's some details in the README about using the open SSL password hash. Take a look there. But we're here today actually to deploy Terraform or deploy APEX File with Terraform. Again, Terraform init to install the initial modules. That's done. Now we need to build a Terraform plan. And we're going to build a plan, and then we're going to use Terraform apply and apply the plan that we're building here. So we always know we have a plan that's held in a state that we can always take a look at and understand exactly what we deployed. And now I'm going to apply the plan that I just built. And this deployment actually doesn't take very long. So we'll fast forward a little bit here through the Terraform deployment, not a big deal. Apply is going to go out and do some work. So let's take a look at the target Azure resource group. I had a few artifacts that were already up there, some DNS, the network security groups, a few other things there. I put a jump host in there. A lot of this can be found in the details of that deployment guide that I had at the beginning of this link, how to set this up. Very easy to do. Now Terraform apply is going. It's going off and building all the infrastructure as code that is that's created from the Terraform here. I'll refresh this a few times and you'll see more and more artifacts being deployed here. Perfectly fine. It's exactly what I want. Network interfaces, the disks, and then the VMs. Remember those, I'm deploying 4 VMs to make an entire cluster. And I can see right here inside the JSON, I'm actually using the marketplace images from Azure that Dell has publicly available to deploy this cluster. So there's the storage profile, and previously was the inside the plan for the image reference. If you want to see them in the marketplace, you can search for Dell. I have them all favorited there, the ones I use a lot. And as this deployment completes here with Terraform, we can now monitor either with the serial console or go into the GUI. So we see the external IP addresses, 10.0.2.5, and then the internal, remember the topology at the beginning, 10.0.1, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So 4-node cluster, 2 different network interfaces, internal and external. Now I'm going to use the Azure serial console to connect to one of the nodes. Now, as a post deployment, this process here is going to be running behind the scenes, not only to stand up OneFS on each of the nodes, then it has to cluster all the nodes together. So this will take about 10 to 15 minutes as a post deployment step. Nothing to do, simply wait. Take a little bit of time here, and if you want, like I'm doing here, you can just observe everything going on via the serial console from one of the, in this case, 4 VMs that I deployed. It's all done. I'm going to log in with root and the unhashed password that I created. Remember, we talked about that previously. So now I'm into the node. I can do ISI status. What do I see here? Well, I see there's only one node. It's green. That's perfect. But I really was hoping I was going to see the whole cluster. Well, not a big deal. That process is still working behind the scenes as an additional deployment job. So now I can go over to my jump host that I also put in the same VNet here. And I will go to HTTPS, and I'll hit one of those nodes in the external IP address output there that we had, and I'm going to hit it with port 8080. So I'm going to 10.0.2.5.8080, HTTPS, and up comes the OneFS storage administration GUI. I log in with root and that unhashed password, and what do I see here? Well, just like I saw in the serial console when I did ISI status, I see one node. I deployed 4. Well, again, the process is still working behind the scenes. We just have to give it a little bit of time. This is pretty cool. There's the Azure instance type referenced here. So I can see the actual Azure machine inside of OneFS that I deployed. Back over to the serial console, and let's take a look and let's see where we're at here. Get pretty familiar with the Azure with the OneFS CLI as you start doing some of these commands. So there we go. They're getting clustered together. I see the 4 nodes there. One of them still has a little bit of a red mark there. Well, let's run it again. Boom, all done. Cluster's done. I see my HDD storage type, which is what I picked at the very beginning with Terraform. Remember, I used standard LRS from an Azure perspective. It's exactly what I want for a cluster. That's pretty much it. I can go into the OneFS GUI here, and there we go. Previously, I only saw 1. Now I see all 4 nodes clustered together. Now I can start sharing out file shares and consuming this enterprise-grade storage cluster in the cloud. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.